As we continue to explore our money stories, continue to think about our stewardship practices and the ways that God is calling us to live in this world, the ways that God calls us to use our resources. We explore this week the theme of reimagine. And that's really the theme at the heart of our texts, our readings for today. Our gospel reading revisits the story of the widow's mite, where Jesus condemns an economic system that would keep this woman in poverty, that would create the situation of poverty, and asks us to think about a better way to live together. In our reading from Leviticus, we hear about the year of Jubilee, a year that we are invited to imagine leaving the edges for the poor and the immigrant. The 50th year celebration where the harvest is shared, where people return to the land, where debts are forgiven and prisoners are set free, where people and land rest together for an entire year. So, as we think about our stories today, I sat down with Laurie and Gary Brown to talk about our passage from Leviticus and to think about how God is calling us to reimagine our money stories today. Let's take a listen.
One of the things that come to mind is like, when someone gets illness or disease, or like in Laurie's case, her kidney problems, that you go into the depression or you go into the feeling of, why is this happening to me? Why did God pick me to do this, or something like that? And Laurie has brought us along to say, well, why not us? Because since her transplant, we've been involved with the different organizations, Mid-America Transplant and everything like that. That's what comes up with the tying of the blankets and the other activities and fundraisers that we do that helps the community. And so it's like, it isn't something against us. It is something that for us, it causes us something to do and show the love that God has given us, that we can go out and do more with it.
Um, and we were going along pretty well and had a normal life, and then all of a sudden found out I had kidney disease. So you did have to reimagine your relationship with each other, because now I have a chronic illness, and I continue to have a chronic illness. Because I have a transplant doesn't mean I don't have kidney disease. I do. And then your relationship with others as well, and even being able to give to others is important, but also it's humbling to be able to accept a gift like that too. And being able to be in a place where you can say, I accept that, and I can't say thank you. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I can verbally say thank you, but I can't repay that gift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting connection to our text here too, that there's a release, a gift that's given to everyone. The whole community is given something in this year of Jubilee. For some, it's a forgiveness of debts, return to the land of their ancestors. For others, though, it means they have to give up some of the accounts they've been holding, the work they've been doing in their own fields. And so together, they're reimagining what it means to be in community together. So thinking about some of those things and thinking about our own community and our own context, how is God calling us to reimagine our money stories today?
But it required a lot of trust that the person who owned my debt would release me, and the person who's releasing that debt not feeling like they're being gypped, or how am I going to get my money back, and how am I going to survive? So a lot of trust that way, and and trust that your fields will produce even though you're not taking care of them. And so it required a lot of trust.
Kind of like with the Israelites in the desert, trusting that every morning there would be manna for them to gather for that day's meal.
And that they didn't have to gather
They didn't have to
more.
hoard it. They
Mhm.
could just gather what they needed because
Mhm.
it would be there again.
Yeah, yeah, and a continual invitation to trust that God provides, that God gives us what we need, God gives us enough, and enough to be shared and enough to go around.
And that's in direct competition with what we hear in our day to day. Even people hoard today. I mean, couldn't find toilet paper a couple months ago, and we don't trust that there's enough for everybody. And I think to go even deeper, we don't even trust that we can give away enough so that, for example, we wouldn't have any hungry people. There'd be no more hunger. But we all have to trust that, our ability to give what we need to could solve that problem, and it could.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we had just saw, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, that still was enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what we see, I think. But to believe that's enough is hard. Well, I think even with everything that's happened and kind of resetting our lives with COVID, and being at home, and seeing the people who are struggling, and having coworkers who are furloughed, and then, okay, so Gary and I are still working and we're doing okay. Government gives us some money. What should we do with that? I mean, all of a sudden there's $1,200. What should we do with that? So I think, you have to think about those kinds of things too, that sometimes those gifts maybe need to pass through us to somebody else.
That leads us actually perfectly into our final question, that I think we can spend a lot of time talking about. But what might a year of Jubilee look like for us today?
Well, I think it would be really hard to imagine resting and relaxing for a full year, but also so exciting to have people you love near you, the time to enjoy each other, the time to have deeper relationships instead of just superficial because you're always busy or you're working in the fields. In our day to day, we have some of that slow down, and the ability to spend more relational time with each other. But to think about that in a year like that.
And too, I'm always struck that this is good for the people, but it's also good for the land. That the land has a year of rest as well, and that Sabbath is for all of creation.
Right. Well, and it does connect a little bit to what we've experienced again with COVID, and when we were all kind of in lockdown, and even yet still don't have as much people out and about as we did, and how that gave Earth a time to rest as well. And
Less cars, so the pollution has gone down, and
lots of companies are thinking about maybe people don't have to be in a physical location. Maybe we don't have to take up that space. Maybe that space could be used then in long term as we think about things. And maybe these big buildings don't have to be big buildings anymore, and could go back to green space and healthier. When we think about all those types of things for releasing, first of all, you have to have a lot of trust that, it's okay. It's going to be okay. This is what the Lord commanded. It's all going to be good. And, I don't have to prove my worth by doing things, but it's also a little bit of glimpse into heaven. What would heaven be like? And as we say the Lord's Prayer and we talk about our kingdom, your kingdom come, and that's on earth as it is in heaven, then, I think that your kingdom come is about having heaven on earth. What do we do here to help have glimpses of heaven here on earth? And, how do we have pieces of that jubilee so that we feel like we're following through with that command or that petition in the Lord's Prayer about, heaven on earth. So, your kingdom come today.
Well, and also when you think about if the whole world would do it, it would be so much easier. But it does have to start with just a few people. So yeah, we could be the start. Our church could be the start of it, and it can go further and further. And in this day of technology with the computers, think of if this had happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Everybody would be lost. But now we have communication. Now we have abilities to reach out to other people, and we're able to fulfill something and get it started.
Go ahead. To say, I just see our congregation so willing to help others, even with God's work, our hands, we've got a lot of diapers, so we do respond to people in need. When there is a need, we do that. And, it is, for me, it is like a glimpse of heaven on earth. We're trying to help. We're trying to see that we're part of a bigger community. We don't just take care of each other in our church, but we reach out to other communities, and we're always willing to do that. So part of the reason that, we've been members for so long.
Great. Well, thanks for joining me. It was good to be in conversation with you, and great to think about the ways God is calling us to reimagine our own stories as we live into God's kingdom.
Thank you.